Friday Reads, where we help you find your next read. I'm Jill, and this week we're going to talk about scary books for Halloween.
And I'm Julie, and please remember that although our doors are closed to the public due to COVID-19, our library is open for curbside pickups. And we had some exciting news this week. The hold limits were increased for most patrons from 10 to 25. So if you see a title or two that you'd like, put it on hold at infosoup.org.
All right, so I'm going to get us started with a classic. This is The Invisible Man by H.G. Wells. This recommendation came from one of our librarians who has gone back and he's read a lot of the H.G. Wells books, and he says they're all very, very good, and they're not really hard reads or anything. H.G. Wells is known for The War of the Worlds, which was read on the radio as a Halloween special in 1938, and people actually believed that there was an alien invasion going on. So he creates it's impossible things, but he creates it in a realistic way that you can believe that it's really happening. And in this one, it's creepy and believable, The Invisible Man. And you can see Elizabeth Moss's face. The movie, if you've seen the movie, is based off this novel.
And my first pick is going back in time also. I have got Stephen King's The Shining, which is definitely one of the most scary books I have ever read. And I made the mistake of reading this book when I worked the night shift alone at one of the local hospitals, so really scared the heck out of me. But in this story, the Overlook Hotel claims to be the most beautiful physical setting of any resort, but Jack Torrance, the new winter caretaker who comes there with his wife and their 5-year-old son, see much, much more there. Jack, the caretaker, looks at it as an opportunity, as a way back from failure and despair, hoping to conquer his demons and write a play while he's there. His wife's hoping that it's a chance to preserve her family. And Danny, their son, who is blessed or cursed with the shining, which is a precognitive gift, senses the evil lurking within the Overlook's 110 empty rooms. An evil that seems to be waiting just for them. So this was a great Stephen King book. When I asked some of our patrons and some of my friends other scary books that Stephen King has written, the one that came up the most was Pet Sematary as one of his best books. Other ones that came up were Salem's Lot, Christine, It, and The Stand.
He's the master of scary.
He is.
The next one is another kind of classic, Neil Gaiman, Neverwhere. Neil Gaiman is really good at creating very fantasy. I think this is actually an urban fantasy and not horror, but it's still got creep to it. It's kind of like a spooky kind of Alice in Wonderland story, in which under the streets of London, there is a city of monsters and murders and angels and knights and maidens, and all the people who slip between the cracks wind up down in this underworld. So it's kind of a cool story. I always have memorable things when I read his books, images that I remember. So that's my next recommendation.
That sounds like a good one. I've read a few of his, but not that.
Yeah.
My next pick is a newer book called The Chain by Adrian McKinty. This was just published last year. This was another one that I listened to as an audio book, and this one definitely had my heart pounding as I was listening to the audio book. The story in this one is a young girl is abducted on her way to school, and after that her mother's phone rings and she is told that a stranger has abducted her child, and to free her child she must abduct someone else's child and pay a ransom. Then her child will be released when her victim's parents kidnap another child, and if any of those things don't happen, her child will be killed. And that is how she becomes part of the chain. The rules are simple. The moral challenges to this are impossible. Find the money fast, find your victim, and then commit a horrible act you'd have never thought yourself capable of just 24 hours ago. But what the masterminds behind the chain know is that parents will do anything for their children. So it turns out that kidnapping is only the beginning of this story.
Ooh, that does sound good.
That was good. Like I said, it was a great one to listen to as an audiobook.
Ooh, it makes it more creepy that way too. My next pick is a new release. This is Mallory by Josh Malerman. This is the follow-up novel to Bird Box, if you read Bird Box last year or watched the movie on Netflix. This is the follow-up, so it's more of that creepy world where there's monsters and they have to blindfold themselves so they don't see it. You get a little more into Mallory, who escaped last time, and now you get to hear more about it. So this is my next pick. Bird Box was really creepy, so. And the
I
book
didn't
was,
see that movie.
the book is better.
Okay, as always.
That's my next choice.
And my third pick for a scary book goes back in time. This is The Exorcist by William Peter Blatty, published in 1971. I actually read this book when I was in high school, and it absolutely terrified me. This is the story of Regan McNeil, the 11-year-old daughter of a movie actress who's living with her mom in the Washington, D.C. area. And after a series of poltergeist-like disturbances in their rented house, Regan begins to rapidly undergo disturbing psychological and physical changes. And her mother initially mistakes Regan's behavior as a result of repressed anger over her parents' divorce and her absent father, and she attempts to find rational explanations. But the drama that continues is terrifying as two priests attempt to exorcise the demon possessing the child. 2 years after its publication, this was turned into a movie, which was very popular. It earned 10 Academy Award nominations. And I have to say the theme song from that movie, Tubular Bells, still gives me the chills when I hear it.
That movie was terrifying. It was so scary. Okay, so this one is Devolution by Max Brooks. This is the author of World War Z. He's got a new book out. In this book, he takes on the legend of Bigfoot. So, as the ash and the chaos from Mount Rainier's eruption settles, details on the story of a Green Loop massacre are revealed through a journal that they find. So, and I guess it's pretty terrifying. So, Max Brooks, Devolution.
And my fourth pick for today is Riley Sager's Home Before Dark. This is a new book, just came out in June of 2020. So in this book, you follow the protagonist, Maggie Holt, as she returns to the home her family owned and fled years prior, an experience that became the inspiration for her father's best-selling nonfiction book, House of Horrors. There's just one problem with Maggie returning. She doesn't really believe a word of what her father has written about her childhood, and she's determined to prove that this old house is nothing more than an old dilapidated house that needs some TLC. But as Maggie gets settled into that old house, some things seem to defy logic, and she starts to begin to wonder if everything she believed or didn't believe about her family's ordeal is true. Ghosts are real, aren't they? This book will make you think twice. I really like this book a lot. Some other read-alikes to Riley Sager's book about a house like that would be like The Amityville Horror by Jay Anson, and newer books like Jennifer McMahon's The Invited and Lucy Foley's The Guest List, if you like books like this.
I'm surprised that's the only haunted house one on our list.
I know.
Because I feel like there's a lot of those.
There are.
I love those though. So my next one might not be quite so scary, but it's something I've been meaning to read forever. A Discovery of Witches by Deborah Harkness. This takes place in a library where they discover a centuries-old manuscript that starts bringing a horde of demons and witches and vampires to the library.
Oh my.
So she has to get into witchcraft and to get them away. I've heard it compared to, it's a kind of a historical fantasy, and compared to Harry Potter meets Outlander, so who knows?
That's an interesting twosome to put together.
Yes, it is.
Now you got me intrigued about that one.
It's just the first book in 3, so if you like it, there's more books to follow. So.
And my last pick is The Whisper Man by British author Alex North. This one came out last year. This is the only book in my picks that I haven't read yet, but it's on my list. In this book, the story is, after the sudden death of his wife, Tom Kennedy believes a fresh start will help him and his young son heal, a new beginning in a new house in a new town in Featherbank, England. But unfortunately, this town has a dark past. 20 years earlier, a serial killer abducted and murdered 5 of its residents. And until killer Frank Carter was finally caught, he was nicknamed the Whisper Man, for he would lure his victims out by whispering at their windows at night. So just as Jake and his young son settle into their new home, a new young boy vanishes. And this disappearance resembles very similar to what those crimes were from the years ahead of time. So there's lots of old rumors being ignited. So this story is told in alternating voices. This thriller delivers strong twists with a suspense building layer by layer. And it's also got a touching father and son relationship. You're going to have to read this book to discover how this all turns out.
So thanks for watching. We hope that you got some ideas for your next read to get you in the mood for Halloween.
See you next time. If you have a favorite scary story or favorite book you've read that scared the bejesus out of you, comment in our video feed. We love to hear from you. Happy reading, everybody.
Bye.